TG Geeks 2.0, episode 417, January 15th, 2024. This is a special Shameless Casghgrab Second Opinion. And we're doing this for our good friend Arkle, who actually was one of our very first listeners to...
Among the first.
Yeah, way back. We go
when we
way
first started,
back from
back to the slice days.
Slice days,
Yeah.
yes. So he's asked us to do a couple of movies, give a second opinion on a couple of movies that he has already reviewed on Shameless Casghgrab through the 9 seasons that he's done that.
How long ago did he first do these? Do you remember?
Oh my God, I don't know. It seems like forever.
Oh, last month seems like forever.
Well, I know. Let's see. I don't remember. I don't know when.
We don't have to look it up. I was just wondering.
Anyway, we have chosen from, I think it was season 2, we chose Krull from 1983 and Nosferatu
From 1922.
From 1922. I think that was later on. In
I hope that's the one he
several
wanted,
seasons.
because there was a remake.
Yes, there was. Yeah,
so
it was 1922.
Okay, good. I would have hated that we watched the wrong one.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, he did say, or you can choose to do whatever you want to do.
Okay, well, that works.
So, Krull from 1983.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, where do we start on this one?
Where do you start on that film?
Okay, I'll tell you where to start, and that is
I saw that in the theater.
Well, I did too. But I was going to say we actually need to start probably in either late 81 or early 82, because the trailers for this movie came out a year and a half before the movie hit.
Oh my God.
And it was a freaking 3 minutes long trailer. You got the entire stupid movie before the film finally came out. And I remember, I remember when I first saw the trailer, I thought, oh, well, this looks nice. But then after seeing it, for like 30 times, every time I went back to the movies, I'm like, okay, this doesn't look nice anymore. Yeah. And then in fact, I even remember I went out to the movies with our good friend Corey. She and I went out to the theater one time, and Krull was still not out yet. We went out, I think we went to see Risky Business. And lo and behold, we get the trailer for Krull. And I'm kidding you not, there was this collective moan throughout the entire theater. Oh my God, not Krull again. In fact, I actually heard a couple of people say, not Krull again. But, I needed to know what this movie was all about. So when it finally came out, I was staying in Colorado Springs with some family. I went down to the local mall, watched it, and thought, wow, it looks pretty. Yeah. Mostly.
Yeah.
And I had to really think about it. What was your initial reaction? I mean, right off the top.
Initially, when I first saw it, I thought, wow, that's a pretty cool film. I mean, there were some things about it that
keep in mind, this is also 1983.
Yes, this was 1983 that just were kind of like, after I saw it, I thought, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, the big bugaboo about this film for me is, this castle moves.
This fortress, yeah.
Fortress moves all over this planet. And in one night, they finally arrive at the castle.
Well, they did get
fortress.
Help. They did get help.
I know, but
they got help to know, because that was the big problem. They didn't know where this castle was going to arrive. But
right.
You bring up a really good point, though.
How do they, if it appears on the other side of this planet,
how are they going to get there?
The heck did they get there?
Well, they were lucky that it didn't.
Yeah, I know.
But in a strange way, you actually bring up probably one of my biggest critical points of this movie, and I will say, on the whole, I like it. In fact, I will even say this is a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
I should not like this movie.
Yeah. So let's give just a little background on this film. I mean, it's got some names in it.
It does.
It really does.
It does. There's some good names.
There's Ken Marshall, Freddie Jones, Alan Armstrong. I mean, Robbie Coltrane is in
Yeah.
this thing.
I'd forgotten he was in that.
And it was directed by Peter Yates and written by Stanford Sherman. I'm not familiar with either one of them, but I'm sure if I looked at their
Hold on a
IMDb,
minute.
I'd
You said
probably.
Peter Yates. I think. Let me double check
Is
on
that
this.
the?
I think he did.
Is he the one?
I think he did 2010. I'm going to look that up now. But I thought he did 2010. I could be wrong. Yeah, I'm not seeing it there. I'm thinking of somebody else.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah. Anyway, so it has some names. It had the star appeal. You know, obviously Ken Marshall, who was a regular on Deep Space Nine, and did a bunch of other things. But it was an interesting film for kind of the story, the mythology, shall we say, to a point.
It was an attempt at creating some epic high fantasy.
Yep.
And while I will give them a nod for that, this story is anything but streamlined.
Right.
It is a mess. It's very, very messy. It's trying to do too much and it's not a short film by any stretch of the imagination.
For heaven's sake, no.
They're trying to do a lot.
For that time period, 2 hours and 1 minute was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And there's so many little conundrums that keep being thrown into this film that make you feel like, okay, this movie's only a little bit over 2 hours. Why do I feel like I've just watched a 6-hour epic?
I know.
Because there's so much going on.
Every time you watch it, it's like, oh my God, do we have to slog through this again?
Right. And it's not like
the whole thing with the Spider-Woman with Lissa is just like,
right.
Oh my God, is he ever going to make it out of it?
But here's the thing. Now compare it to other high fantasy movies, and I think maybe the standard bearer today would be Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Now, Lord of the Rings has got a very streamlined kind of storytelling. Yes, there are, you could call them vignettes if you want to.
Yeah, and they are 6 hours long.
They are, but however, despite the fact, especially with the director's cut, we're talking 3 hour, excess of 3 hours long, it still has a very good flow to it. This movie does not. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the editing, I don't know if it's the way they segue from one story, plot complication into the next, but every time it happens, I feel like I'm being jarred out of what I've been watching and thrown into a completely new movie.
Yeah.
Because it does not feel connected. And I find that annoying, despite the fact that, yes, in its entirety, I do kind of like this movie. But there's just way too much going on. And they introduce story ideas that I feel don't get a very good development. Case in point, there is the Seer, played by John Welsh. They first go to him because they think he will be the one who will be able to predict where this fortress is going to appear. And at first he cannot, because whatever the big threat is, I can't remember what its name is now. The big monster, the antagonist for this film, he stops him. So the seer says, "Well, there is a place of power that I can go to. We need to make this little expedition, and I can take you there." Well, but they don't make it. Instead, he gets killed and is replaced by some doppelganger. So I feel this was a very weird sidetrack that did not seem necessary, but then that throws us into Freddie Jones's character having to look for Widow of the Web. Wow. Again, a lot going on. And then you've got Colwyn's his first little quest to get his hand on the glaive. The glaive, that's it, the glaive, which is a cool weapon, by the way.
Yeah.
Really cool weapon.
But you got to reach into the lava to get it. It's like, oh, okay.
And then Colwyn himself, he's a total twat. I mean, he's a really unlikable character. For the most part, he has to kind of go through this maturation process. So this is now his own personal hero's journey, and yet we really don't see it. We don't see that maturation process. So it feels like there's a lot being thrown in here into the mix and yet nothing is ever properly developed into creating what I think would be a really good movie. And yet, I like it. And I feel embarrassed to say that because I know that Arkle didn't.
Yeah,
and I understand, and I understand why he didn't. I get it because this movie's messy.
It's one of those guilty pleasures.
It is a guilty pleasure. I can't help it, and yet, it to me, it's the fantasy version of the black hole. I can't. If it's on, I have to watch it.
Yeah,
I can't turn my eyes away from it. I'm wondering if there is
a nemesis.
It is. It's my fantasy nemesis, and I'm wondering if there isn't something, some sort of subliminal suggestion that's taking place. Every third or sixth frame, there's this little hidden message that says you will watch this to the end. I don't know. I have to. I can't help it. It's a fascinating film, and I think maybe in some ways it does serve as maybe a progenitor for future films to come. I'm not sure. I've never really looked on the trivia on this. It looks like you're doing that right now.
I didn't look at the trivia this time. So I mean, there's just
it's a very fascinating movie and deeply flawed in so many ways, and yet I can't help but like it. Now, you've seen it numerous times with me. We've got the Blu-ray, I think, for this film. As we've watched it later, I mean, have you come to any new conclusions or ideas on this?
Just kind of why am I watching this again? Every time we watch it,
I don't even remember why.
Right in the middle of it,
I think we bought it at Blockbuster or something.
Yes.
And I don't remember whose idea was it. Was it mine? Was it yours? Did we
both
both think of it? I don't know. I don't remember.
It's kind of a cool movie, but it's not.
I think
it's one of those that you start watching it and it's kind of cool at the beginning, and then all of a sudden, oh God, as you said, you have all of these vignettes that don't fit together very well.
It's a badly pieced jigsaw puzzle.
Bad throughput, you know.
And it turns out that the big MacGuffin, if you will, at the beginning of the movie, which is this marriage between Colwyn and Lissa, that's the key to defeating the monster.
Right.
Which I thought was, oh, really? After all that?
Exactly.
And he loses the glaive in the process. Okay, now I'm upset. Okay. I mean, that's like, Arthur losing Excalibur. I was not happy about that. That bothered me because the glaive is such a freaking cool weapon. I hated to see that happen.
Oh, and Liam Neeson's in this also.
Oh, yeah. Sadly, he doesn't live that long.
No, but it's just,
But that just goes, it shows you the kind of cast this movie has. And I love how at the very end, it gives one of the most cryptic lines right at the end. And it said, Colwyn and Lissa grew up to be, these wonderful rulers of the planet and the beloved. And their son grew up to rule the galaxy. And I thought, oh, so they gave what? Birth to Paul Muad'Dib? I don't know. What are you saying?
What do you
Yeah, killing name.
My name is a killing word.
Yeah. Okay. So, are we going to talk about Dune now?
Yes, that's another guilty pleasure.
Oh, big guilty pleasure. But that's for
both the Alan Smithy version
and David Lynch
and the David Lynch.
Yeah, both of them. But that's for another show.
All right. Then
so that's Krull.
That's Krull. Nosferatu from 1922. Boy, this film is definitely dated.
Oh, highly.
Did you like that? Huh?
Yeah. This movie was a surprise. I had never seen it before.
Yeah, it was.
I'm ashamed to admit that I've never seen it. I always wanted to, but I never got around to it.
Yeah, it borrowed. What was it? I think the. Oh shoot. What did it say in the IMDb? He said, liberally drawn from.
Oh yeah,
it's
very liberally drawn from Bram Stoker's novel.
and they were sued, and that's the interesting thing about this film, and that's why it looks so.
It looks crappy. It's bad. It's not restored well.
Because the original prints were destroyed after the lawsuit from Bram Stoker's family. And so the only thing that they have to go with were secondhand prints that were...
I think they were covered in Germany or something.
Yeah,
Somewhere in Europe they found them.
All over the place. There's a number of them, which is also explains why the title cards are such a mess. They are just a hodgepodge of everything.
And kind of far and few between, too, for a silent film.
Yeah.
There is a lot of visual...
It's a lot
scenery
of visual
going on.
Exposition.
And that is what I was going to say. There's a lot visually going on, and you have to sort of infer, in your own mind, what's going on here based on the little screenshots of dialogue cards that pop up what feels like every 3 minutes, and that's not a lot.
Yeah, and it was interesting to watch this film and see that the only transitions they had were just a straight cut or the iris down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. There was no fades, there's nothing. It's the iris in, iris out, or just a cut.
The other thing that really surprised me about this movie is that I expected Count Orlok, who is this movie's Dracula. I expected Orlok to be terrifying. And in fact, I read in the trivia that I think it was either in Switzerland or in Sweden, I don't remember which country, this movie got banned for being too horrifying.
Right.
And I mean, by today's standard, yeah, right, sure. I mean, it's ridiculously tame. Although there is one brilliant image where he's stalking someone and you see his shadow. And they lit it very well so that the shadow gets a little elongated, and it makes him that was a spooky image. I liked that in terms of pure cinematography. But everything else about this film I thought was just ridiculously mild. Granted, I'm 62 years old, so of course it's going to seem mild to me. But there goes our cat.
She's going to destroy the Trader Joe's bag.
So please pardon our cat here in our TG Squared studios. But the movie was nowhere near as terrifying image-wise as I had expected it to be. I mean, I would even look to Lon Chaney's original Phantom of the Opera as being scarier,
right,
than this movie. But still, I think what makes this movie interesting is its purely historical value. I should also point out that earlier you said that it was liberally taken from the Bram Stoker novel.
Yes.
And there are some really weird literal changes in here in terms of characters and even how Count Orlok is defeated, which almost feels anticlimactic.
Yeah.
As opposed to what we know in the traditional vampire, especially the Bela Lugosi story, where there's this big, almost a showdown, if you will. And we don't get that here. It's almost a passive defeat.
Right.
I'm not going to give any spoilers for anybody who hasn't watched it. And now this actually makes me really curious to want to see the remake, to see how closely that follows.
True.
But it's a fascinating movie. I would recommend watching it. I mean,
absolutely. I thought it was a little long in the tooth, obviously because the dialogue, and then it appeared to be the same music over and over again. That could have been just...
Which also seemed to borrow from some standard classical pieces of music as well,
right,
which at times felt a little bizarre.
Yeah.
Kind of circusy even.
Exactly. And there were, they tried to do some things with the music to...
Well, there was some good, in the beginning, there's some really great, what I would consider to be very typical pipe organ music that starts the movie off, and then it goes orchestral, and then it became almost silly.
And then it's back to the organ for the rest of the film.
A little bit.
Now, the interesting thing is, if we do mention Dracula, and I'm just going to talk about Dracula for a moment, is that what used the
Oh, originally it used Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake
as the music throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
But
it was Philip Glass
who
he composed a totally new score and used the Kronos Quartet for it.
Yes.
And holy moly, that just changes the movie.
It changes the whole film.
It's phenomenal.
This
it's
could
beautiful.
This could do with a little sprucing up, shall I say?
It could.
I think, and maybe some editing too.
Possibly. I'm surprised no studio has actually tried to get their hands on this and do something.
Fix it. Yeah.
I mean, granted, when
do some restoration,
when
I think
prints,
they could.
I mean, I think they could now with present technology. Granted, they don't have the negatives anymore, so they got to work off prints and then create a brand new negative and then clean that up, and that has got to be a very expensive proposition.
Yeah.
There is also one other thing I want to talk about, and that is the acting in this film. Now, Orlok, obviously, he's this ghoulish-looking vampire, so we're going to give him a pass.
Stiff.
He's
a real stiff.
He's a real stiff. His arising out of the coffin.
Oh, that was
good.
That was good.
That was good. I liked it. It was very cheap looking, but very effective nevertheless.
Absolutely.
But I'm thinking about some of the other cast members, and they all looked, in my opinion, if I'm going to be scared of anybody, I'm going to be scared of them. Because they were just freakishly weird people. I mean, their expressions were obviously just outrageous for the day because it's a silent film. So there's a lot.
And it was supposed to take place in 1838, and this was 1922 Germany.
Right.
So
So I'm guessing a lot of people are very expressive back then.
Yeah.
More so than we are now. But they were almost ghoulish in how they express themselves with their emotions. I mean, there's a moment where we see Harker, who he's being sent by Renfield,
Yes.
to negotiate the deal with Orlok. So there's a literary change, and the look of glee on his face because he's now gonna, I guess, come back with enough money to marry his wife.
Yeah.
Or marry his girlfriend.
It was almost, when you looked at him, it was almost
Exactly, it was. That's the expression he made. It was very, very strange. But so these are the kind of things that I think need to be taken maybe in historical context.
Yeah.
To get a better understanding of the film. Yeah, they have to just over-exaggerate the expressions to try to convey the emotional content of it. And I think I know it looked like it went way too far. But still, it's a fascinating historical piece of movie. So in that respect, I would say it's definitely worth watching. I don't know if it's deserving of massive rewatches unless it's part of some historical movie study.
Right.
But it is worth watching at least one time, especially if you are a classic horror movie fan.
Exactly. It's on, Roger Ebert's, what was it? Where does it say it? Oh.
Like 20 important films to watch or something like that?
Roger Ebert's great movies list.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually turned 100 years old last year.
Oh, that's true. It did.
I mean, that's a long time for a whole film to still be around.
Yeah, the fact that we haven't lost it is a miracle, and I'm glad that it still exists, even if it's a very rough version of it.
Yep.
I'm glad it is still there, and I would like to think that maybe somebody would take the time and invest some money in it to give it a more deserving restoration.
Yeah, and this, for its time, for 1922, an hour and 34 minutes.
That's a long film.
We
didn't think it was going to be that long.
Film.
Because, like, the original Phantom of the Opera is not even an hour.
Right.
And so I thought, when we discussed seeing this, I thought, oh, this movie's going to be 40 minutes maybe?
Yeah.
Hardly.
Exactly.
And this movie covers a lot of... In fact, it even touches on the voyage on the Demeter.
Yep, exactly.
Which was recently covered in a movie that just came out. There goes our cat again. Please forgive our precious Sophie. It even that was a story item that came out in a movie I think last summer about the vampire being transported over the Atlantic. So to see that included in this production was quite surprising.
Yeah, exactly. And there were it was a reasonable film, for what it was.
Yeah.
When you look at it and you realize when it was made and the fact that, how much time they spent making this film and how long the film was.
Right.
It was just a very interesting film.
It is.
Well, that's it for Shameless Cash Grab Second Opinion and the TG Geeks webcast. So we'll catch you again later.
Cheers.
Bye.